2 decades of fighting, thousands of lives lost, and trillions of dollars spent, all ending in total collapse. This chart shows exactly how that $2.26 trillion was distributed. The vast majority fed the war machine directly through Department of Defense Overseas Contingency Operations, or OCO, which is a specialized fund for direct warfighting, alongside base budget increases and long-term interest. But look at the sliver allocated to rebuilding the country. Of the $148 billion set aside for reconstruction, up to $29 billion was lost entirely to systemic waste and fraud. Private contractors bore a disproportionate share of the violence. Their death toll reached 3,923, significantly higher than the 2,456 recorded U.S. military fatalities. The intervention engineered a fragile, privatized machine built on foreign cash and a massive reliance on external defense corporations to function. The mechanical unwinding of the Afghan state accelerated in February 2020. The United States and the Taliban signed the Doha Agreement, a bilateral deal that legitimized the Taliban on the world stage while completely sidelining the official Afghan government. This agreement locked the U.S. into a relentless timeline to withdraw its forces. By January 2021, the American troop presence had dropped to just 2,500 personnel, the lowest level since the initial invasion 20 years earlier. Left behind were the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, or ANDSF. The ANDSF was the official Afghan state military, and the U.S. built it to mirror its own operations, meaning it required sophisticated logistics, high-tech enablers, and constant air support to survive. On paper, the Afghan military boasted 300,000 troops. In reality, commanders padded their payrolls with non-existent ghost soldiers to pocket the salaries. The actual fighting fell onto a tiny elite force of commandos, 7% of the military doing 80% of the combat. The final withdrawal orders targeted the thousands of private military contractors responsible for managing the state's maintenance and supply chains. This chart tracks the immediate consequence of that decision. In mid-2021, the number of contractors was cut by more than half in a matter of months. Without these specialized technicians on site, the Afghan Air Force was instantly grounded. Without air support to drop supplies, regular Afghan troops out in the provinces were completely cut off. They were left stranded at their outposts, quickly running out of food, ammunition, and medical supplies. The rapid collapse of the Afghan military in the summer of 2021 was a guaranteed mechanical failure. You flip the off switch on a military's logistical life support, and the entire structure starves to death. When the Taliban breached Kabul in August 2021, a delayed non-combatant evacuation operation triggered absolute chaos on the tarmac. Caught completely off guard by the speed of the government's fall, the military scrambled to react. Within days, the U.S. rushed 7,000 troops back into the country just to secure Hamid Karzai International Airport. Outside the gates, the environment became relentlessly hostile. Tens of thousands of desperate citizens, many who had worked alongside coalition forces for years, flooded the perimeter, trapped between advancing militants and concrete barriers. The vulnerability of this massive crowd ended in tragedy on August 26th. A suicide bomber attacked Abbey Gate, killing 13 American service members and more than 170 Afghan civilians. It was the deadliest day for the U.S. military in a decade. To manage the sprawling crowds outside the airport walls, American forces had to rely on the Taliban to provide external perimeter security. They were forced to depend on the very insurgency they had spent 20 years fighting to protect their final retreat. When the dust settled, the Taliban walked into a staggering inheritance. The collapsed state left behind an arsenal of modern U.S. military hardware, valued at over $7 billion. This chart breaks down the spoils of that rapid victory. The new regime took control of roughly 40,000 military vehicles, over 316,000 small arms, and 78 functional aircraft. But the most severe threat sits right here. The Taliban seized nearly 42,000 pieces of specialized technology, including night vision goggles and biometric data devices, giving them the tools to actively hunt down former U.S. allies. This influx of gear has accelerated their transition into what analysts called Taliban 2.0. They have adopted the regional command structures left behind by the coalition, and even integrated thousands of former Republic soldiers to operate their captured airframes and specialized corps. Ultimately, the withdrawal did not neutralize the insurgency. It fully funded, armed, and modernized it, transforming a guerrilla force into one of the most heavily equipped extremist states on the planet. The moment the foreign aid stopped, the country's economy cratered, wiping out $5 billion in GDP almost instantly. With central bank assets frozen abroad, 75% of Afghan households were abruptly pushed into severe subsistence insecurity. The security vacuum has also drawn in transnational terror groups. Organizations like ISIS-K, the Islamic State's regional affiliate, are now using the country as a staging ground to recruit fighters and launch international attacks. The Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, or SIGAR, conducted the final audit on the war. The oversight agency concluded that the mission was doomed to fail from the start, crippled by a profound misunderstanding of the region's socio-political reality. A $2.2 trillion state-building experiment collapsed because policymakers prioritized strict political timelines over sustainable battlefield realities. And when the final planes lifted off the runway, the Afghan people were left entirely alone to bear the eternal cost of that failure.